Should men be shamed for not doing housework? That's my subject on today's Fiamengo File. I'm Janice Fiamengo of the University of Ottawa. In the vast enterprise of man-blaming, my example today is not the most outrageous, but it's still blatantly unfair and shockingly dishonest. A new study just released by the Australian Institute of Family Studies has found that in two-parent households with a stay-at-home dad, the working mom still does a lot of the housework. And this news has been trumpeted in newspapers with the usual message that women have a raw deal. The headline at the Mail Online said stay-at-home dads are leaving nearly half the household chores to their working wives. And a subtitle informs us that dads spent only slightly more time on housework than their working partners. Tisk, tisk. Another paper scolded stay-at-home dads not pulling their weight around the house. According to the study, dads spent 28 hours on housework per week on average compared to their working wives who spent 23 hours on housework. What an image, eh? The slothful dad lazing around at home while his poor harried wife spends all day at the office and still must do a lot of the cleaning up and childcare. But there's a lot more to the story than the papers are telling us about, so let me touch on a few points. As a minor side note, let me say that like so many of these so-called scientific studies, the data leaves much to speculate about. It's not entirely clear how the data was gathered. For example, I'm assuming it was through self-reporting and is therefore subject to the usual issues of bias and misrepresentation that are always a factor in such cases. Women have been told by feminists for over 40 years that they're oppressed when it comes to housework, so it's quite possible that they might overestimate the hours they put in. And perhaps men, generally just not as interested, might underestimate their hours. Or perhaps men are simply more efficient in their use of time or less particular about some tasks, thus needing fewer hours to do the same kinds of jobs. Hard to know, but putting that aside, even accepting that the numbers are perfectly accurate and that they show us a picture of men doing less housework in situations in which their female partners are working full-time, they're staying at home. Well, one thing we have to keep in mind is that this scenario accounts for only 4% of all families in the country that was surveyed. It's hardly representative of the majority or even a significant minority of family arrangements. And what is really astounding is what the reports of the study leave out. This is data that could have been used to draw some very different conclusions about male and female workloads. If we look at the stats for two-parent households in which both father and mother are working, and this is an arrangement that accounts for 65% of families in Australia, so it's obviously a lot more representative. If we look at those stats, we notice something that the Mad at Dad reports didn't even mention: a vast disparity in the hours worked outside of the home by male and female partners. In these cases, the father averaged 50 hours per week of paid work, while the mother's putting in a much more humane and far less taxing 31 hours per week on average. In other words, the father is contributing 62.5% of the couple's total paid work time, while his partner contributes only 37.5% of that total. So is this a case of the patriarchy preventing the woman from working long hours, or is it a choice that she has made to find a type of work that allows her a relatively comfortable life and the ability to parent her children without excess stress? Is one partner being lazy? One partner being taken advantage of? It's hard to say, but certainly nowhere in the reports do we hear the complaint that in households where the paid work is shared, women are leaving it to men to do the lion's share. So we might expect to find in these scenarios where both man and woman are working that the woman's lighter input into work outside the home is made up by all the housework that she does, right? But no. While the woman in this scenario is working 19 hours on average less per week than her male partner, she's not working 19 hours more at housework. The man, in this case, is putting in about 15 hours per week on housework, and she's putting in 26, meaning that in total, paid and unpaid, he's doing 65 hours of work per week and she's doing 57. Remember, this is the scenario for 65% of two-parent households. Now the guy doesn't look like such a slouch. Of course, nothing is said in these reports about the kinds of work the sexes are doing. Whether the man's 51 hours might be of a very tiring sort, working in construction, say, or with heavy machinery or appliance repair or running his own business or any of the many other types of work that men regularly do that leave a man exhausted by day's end. While the average woman is working in an office or teaching or doing something less physically demanding. I'm not saying that's true in all cases, but I'm saying it's a crucial factor in understanding men's and women's work. At home, there may similarly be a division of labor that favors the woman who works indoors, doing relatively light tasks such as cooking and dusting while her husband shovels the snow, repairs the roof, and builds the garage. As we all know, an hour and a half of shoveling snow is hardly equivalent to an hour and a half of folding laundry. But imagine the outcry if this were the slant that all the major papers took, that women are consistently leaving it to their male partners to do the unpleasant and heavy physical work at home. And yet tell me if that isn't the case. Actually, what the tables show most clearly is that whether men are the sole breadwinners or whether they are in a situation where both partners are working, men tend to work a lot more outside the home than their female partners. And that even in cases where the man is at home, women just don't put in those long hours. In the scenario in which the woman is the sole breadwinner, she works an average of only 35 hours per week. Instead of shaming and castigating men for their presumed sins of omission when it comes to housework, shouldn't we recognize and maybe even, heaven forbid, praise men for working so hard? Men's labor powers our economies, keeping our societies inventive and competitive, prosperous, and practically efficient. In 96% of two-parent households, men do the majority of work outside the home. And men consistently do the type of work that women don't or won't do. Headline: New study shows that men continue to do most of the world's work and we all benefit from it. It's not a headline I'm expecting anytime soon.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please support us on Patreon. If even half of our subscribers gave us $1 per month, we'd be well on our way to creating more and better content. And don't forget to subscribe to us on Studio Brule.